You can look at, this is a survey of Western citizens, but you can look at, the majority of people say they find the other sex attractive. So whatever that means, people go. So this basic biological difference, you're female, you're male. What's got you bothered? This is what's actually, it's interesting you pointed it out. We discussed this a little bit more in the PY108 class, but what's actually extreme, this is a much more complex issue than this slide wants to let on. But what's interesting is that males seem to pick a dichotomous way of describing themselves. That males either say they're...
Yeah. What exactly do you mean by others? I guess you mean by other species?
Okay, I didn't ask this. I mean, this is...
Oh, you were looking at me like that was...
No, this... I don't mean anything. This was in theirs. It was not other species. They describe themselves in another way. Like they may say they're questioning, or they may say they're curious, or asexual, or ambisexual. I have no idea. But there are other terms that people tend to use. Not that any other species.
That's what it was like. What does? Oh yeah, it feels like what does?
No, like you might say you're asexual, or you might say you're questioning. In that sense. So, but what's interesting is that males are far more likely in our culture to be dichotomous. I'm either heterosexual or homosexual. Females in our culture are far more likely to, if they say other, they tend to much more likely to do something bisexual, or even over here in the other category. To get to,
okay, so that's why you have a higher there.
Yeah, so that's why. Yeah, so we have the females one being higher. So,
so that explains the plasticity.
Well, no, it doesn't explain the plasticity. It's one of the pieces of evidence used for the plasticity. It's one of the. But remember, this is just our culture, and remember, our culture though allows females to be more plastic. Sure. We allow like if you're out and it's a group of people, and let's just say the intoxicants are flowing, and if two girls, even in our, it's like, oh, okay, that's cute. I lean over to kiss a guy, suddenly I'm creepy. Right. Or even in another way, like we look in our culture, if two guys are just friends and holding hands, we see that as forbidden. That is not seen as forbidden across cultures. We have this very clear, demarcated, males can't really. What would be the right way to say? Yeah, not necessarily touch, but lingeringly touch. Like males can't lingeringly touch another dude. That saddens me. Right? You should all do that. That's your homework assignment, males. You have to lingeringly touch another dude, or just like a second too long, and see what happens.
Yeah, I do that.
Like go in to hug them and then not let go. Alright, so anyway, that's gonna be one difference that we see. But that's not cross-cultural. So it makes this data somewhat hard to interpret, because if we allowed males the same freedom as females, would more males also say bisexual or others? So we also see one of the things that happens is cultures immediately try and distinguish males and females from each other. So we all know that one of the things in our culture that we do to distinguish males from females is we say females, remove all your body hair. That's not a universal. And I feel very guilty because this is my public atonement for my guilt. So the new Pope, there was a picture of him. He was washing the feet of I don't remember which Serbian prisoner. Did y'all see this picture? It was a picture. He washed and kissed the feet of this Serbian prisoner, and I was very touched by it. I'm looking at this picture, and the first thing I noticed though was she had really hairy legs. And I felt guilty because I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is wonderful, beautiful picture of the Pope, recreating the foot washing scene from the Christian scriptures, and the first thing I noticed was she had hairy legs. I'm a Westerner. Yes. Well, I'm an American, I should probably say, because not all Western countries. have I shown you the percentage of females who shave? It is like this astounds me. Every time I see this chart, is we have a strong preference for females. My college, one of the things that distinguished my college was the females very often did not shave. They saw it as a symptom of male patriarchy. And so, there was a very vocal feminist. Not feminist is sort of one of those fuzzy words. It was a very vocal, more anti-male feminist. Like people who wanted to expel. Every time they would write a notice, they would say we're having a women's meeting. You know, because they wanted to take men out of women. In many ways, actually. But I mean, I find this really, really surprising with and yes, because if you think about it, this is something that no one really, like, you do not need to remove body hair, and yet we're like, if you're a female and you have body hair, except on your head or your eyebrows or eyelashes. I mean, go as an experience. I mean, if the males have to hug someone a slight second longer, what do we do for females? You have to not shave for a week.
We probably both don't teach.
We're like done.
Done. Look at this for class credit, man. And wear shorts the whole week. So everywhere. One of my friends had her Facebook thing that she was upset because like Dove has some new soap like to make yourself underarm ready or something, and she's like, "What?
It's a deodorant.
A deodorant? Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know. Just it's like Dove has a new underarm ready in 5 days. She's like, "What? Underarm ready?" I do find this kind of surprising. How well, put this into context. Surveys suggest, like national surveys suggest that only roughly 95% of people have had sex, and yet that is, like, our culture preaches that over and over, and more people shave than that. I guess that's where I find it surprising, is our culture preaches this, and then this is even stronger. And this is not a universal. So, all right. So one thing though with the Linnaean view is how much outside of reproduction does the reproductive differences, or do the reproductive differences explain? How deep is this difference in reproduction? Or I want to phrase the question in a sort of weird way. That's not my next slide. I want to sort of phrase it in a weird way in the interest of time. So this is going to be sort of a weird thing to think about. Are females, or males, it doesn't matter which one you want to pick, are females best thought of as human in terms of trying to predict? So this question over here. So should I best think of females or males as humans, as we're all sharing the same one, or sex? And you already voted on this. Y'all said, oh, think of them first as their sex. Why?
The reason I said it is because I feel like the whole, like we're talking about, the whole gender differences is so like prominent in our culture. I feel like, and people just naturally adapt and they just go along with it. That's why I feel like that would be a better predictor, because it's so prominent.
Okay, so you think because on the outside, you're born female, and immediately people try to shunt your behavior in a certain way. So that's a good way of looking at it, but...
Well, yeah, if you like, when you talk about like the Gaussian bell curve, like if you're trying to predict, like whether someone is going to have hairy legs or not, if you look at the bell curve and then say, okay, if they're male or female, you can probably predict.
You can predict that. Okay, that's good for that one. But let's sort of expand it out away from things that could be conceivably related to reproduction, right? Because in shaving, you could make a connection that shaving one's legs is the way our culture says you need to be attractive to the other gender, and that's the predictor variable.
What about what they're going to watch on TV?
So which one would you want to predict? Or what about math skills? What about...
That's internal. That's like more mental, not like actual behavior.
But, okay, but that is one of the things that we want to try and predict. I want to predict propensities. I want to predict tendencies. And since you said it, I just want to give you this. So to tease you for Monday, for a long time, and indeed up until early this century, this phrase "dictatorship of the ovaries" was used to describe females. So far from seeing that the cognitive traits were different, many people thought that the cognitive traits were controlled by the reproductive traits. And this was used to keep women in various positions. So when I say is it deep or shallow, you're absolutely correct to think of it in terms of predictiveness. But then when someone says, well, you as a woman can or can't do X, is that a cultural claim or a biological claim? See what I'm trying to get at?
Okay, yeah, I'll listen.
Wouldn't if someone's claiming humans, wouldn't it have to come from another species? But the mere fact that it's coming from another human to predict another human's behavior, you would actually go to more of a distinct factor.
I'm going to give an example of where we're going to try and distinguish these two things here. I'm going to try to set up a test to distinguish which one is the best explanatory thing here. So that's not today, obviously. So I get what you're saying, and that's a very good point. I'm going to show how this is played out in the social psych literature. So I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.